The last day of death row, inmate Westley Allan Dodd. Why he chose the gallows over a needle. Hi everyone. What kind of man not only accepts his death sentence, but demands it and chooses the most painful path possible? Westley Allan Dodd didn't just go quietly. He orchestrated his own end, down to the very last detail. In 1993, Washington State carried out its first execution in decades, by hanging. And it was at Dodd's own request. His crimes had shocked the nation, but what came after was something far more disturbing. A cold, calculated embrace of death, as if it were his final performance. He claimed it was justice. Others believed it was narcissism, control, or something even darker. As the hours ticked down to midnight, Dodd remained eerily calm, writing letters, declining a last meal, and preparing for the rope. This wasn't just a man meeting justice. It was a man turning his final breath into a statement. Today we take you inside the chilling final 24 hours of Westley Allan Dodd. Dear friends, in the early hours of January 5th, 1993, as frost coated the farmland around Walla Walla, Washington, one of the state's most notorious inmates was not fighting his fate. He was waiting for it. Westley Allan Dodd was not only the first person to be executed in Washington since 1965, he was also the only one in modern history who demanded it. He waived all appeals. He chose the method. And when the state offered him lethal injection, he refused. Hanging, he said, was the only punishment he deserved. It was more than a legal outcome. It was his final, twisted act of control. Dodd's crimes were beyond comprehension. Even seasoned courtroom professionals struggled to discuss the details without breaking down. Over the course of several months in 1989, Dodd abducted, assaulted, and killed 3 young boys in a spree that was so cruel, prosecutors described it as predatory, compulsive, and calculated. But perhaps what set him apart even more than the horror of his acts was what followed after his arrest. Dodd didn't just confess, he boasted. He described every act in disturbing detail, even keeping a diary where he logged times, places, and his own warped satisfaction. He didn't seek to hide or deny. He wanted the world to know exactly what he had done. While the public and legal system were left in disbelief, Dodd was resolute. He did not claim innocence. He did not ask for mercy. He told the court, directly and repeatedly, that he wanted to die. "If I'm ever released," he warned, "I will kill again." His own attorney, shaken by the implications of Dodd's honesty, supported his client's wish for execution. Even therapists who evaluated Dodd came to a rare and unanimous conclusion. This man could not be rehabilitated. He feeds off the attention, one expert said. He is the most dangerous kind of narcissist, intelligent, manipulative, and absolutely without remorse. In his final days, Dodd granted interviews in which he reiterated his desire to be hanged. Not lethally injected, not sentenced to life in prison, but hung by the neck until dead. It was a punishment that hadn't been carried out in the United States in nearly 30 years, and one Washington hadn't used since 1965. Dodd saw it as fitting. "I don't think I deserve a neat, clean, painless little death," he said in a televised statement. "Hang me." By 11:30 a.m. on January 4th, Washington's governor officially denied clemency. Every appeal, including those filed by outside groups like the ACLU, had failed. Their argument wasn't about Dodd's guilt, it was about the method. Hanging, they claimed, was cruel, mutilating, and uncertain. One justice on the state's Supreme Court agreed, but the majority did not. The execution was on. That evening, Dodd declined a special last meal. "Whatever the other inmates are having," he told the kitchen staff. Records show he was served broiled salmon, scalloped potatoes, mixed vegetables, and a fruit dessert. There's no indication how much of it he ate. He spent his final hours in conversation with his attorney, writing a will, and penning a few last letters. His sister and mother had written him days earlier, letters that struck a heartbreaking tone of love, confusion, and pain. "I still love you. I always will," his mother wrote. His sister added, "You'll always be my brother," even while acknowledging that something in him had always been off, something missing. Outside the prison, tensions were rising. Protesters and supporters had gathered in force. Amnesty International stood on one side, holding candles, praying and singing. Across the street, others chanted for justice and waved signs. Fireworks lit the sky. The two sides clashed in noise and conviction, an echo of the national debate over capital punishment that Dodd's case had reignited. Inside, officials were taking no chances. Every detail was rehearsed. The gallows, unused for decades, had been restored and reinforced. The rope was made from 1¼ inch manila hemp, specially treated, boiled, stretched, waxed, and oiled to eliminate recoil and ensure a quick, clean break. Dodd's body weight and height were used to calculate the precise drop needed, 7 feet, 1 inch. At exactly midnight, a small group of witnesses entered the chamber. Only 12 were allowed, chosen by lottery. They stood behind bulletproof glass as Dodd was led into view. He wore a simple white prison uniform. His wrists and ankles were strapped. A black hood was lowered over his head. The knot was placed carefully behind his left ear to maximize the likelihood of a swift neck break. But just before the curtain closed, Dodd leaned into the microphone. His voice was barely audible, later reconstructed by media from notes and transcripts. "I was once asked by somebody if there was any way offenders could be stopped. I said no. I was wrong. I was wrong when I said there was no hope. No peace. There is hope. There is peace. I found both in the Lord Jesus Christ. Look to the Lord, and you will find peace." For the families of his victims, the words rang hollow. One father, whose son had died at Dodd's hands, visibly shook his head in disgust. In their eyes, justice had come far too late. Still, Dodd's execution marked something not seen in decades, the return of a method so old it belonged to another century, resurrected, ironically, by the very man it was meant to punish. When the lever was pulled, the trapdoor opened with a loud crack. Dodd's body fell fast and hard. There was no struggle, no movement, no signs of suffering. By all accounts, it was clean and immediate. 1 minute later, the curtain was drawn. At 12:09 a.m., Westley Allan Dodd was pronounced dead. He was 31 years old. In the weeks that followed, debates raged on. Was it right to let a man choose his own death? Did the state allow itself to become part of a macabre performance? Or was this simply justice done, unflinching and final? For many, Dodd's execution brought closure. For others, it raised haunting questions about power, punishment, and the darkest parts of the human mind. But one thing is certain. Westley Allan Dodd had the last word, just as he intended. In the end, Westley Allan Dodd's execution was more than a punishment. It was a haunting commentary on justice, control, and the terrifying depth of human depravity. He didn't just accept his fate, he orchestrated it, choosing the gallows over a sterile gurney, ensuring the world remembered how he left it. For some, it was justice served, the final breath of a man who preyed on innocence without remorse. For others, it was a chilling spectacle, raising questions about whether allowing him that control gave him the very spotlight he craved. As the trapdoor snapped open and silence filled the execution chamber, Dodd vanished from the physical world, but the echo of his crimes and the debate surrounding his death still linger. In choosing to die on his own terms, Dodd left behind not peace, but a dark legacy that forces us to confront the limits of rehabilitation, punishment, and the very meaning of justice.